So my calling has really been, I think, it's been like John 3:8, where I don't know where the Holy Spirit's coming from. I don't know where it's going, and I'm really just trying to hold on and catch that wind and ride the wind of the Spirit. I was not someone who received clearly, oh, this is what I'm being called to. As Karen said, I was a professional actor and performing artist, and that's what I was doing. And I was happy and fulfilled. But I was called to seminary, actually. And I thought I was going to take some spiritual formation classes just for myself to integrate my own spiritual life and being. Um, but as I kept taking classes because I was curious, I was able to hear God's voice more clearly. And one day when I was doing an internship, because I had to do one for my seminary journey, God spoke really clearly. This is what I'm calling you to. I'm calling you to ordain ministry. And I was thunderstruck because I didn't expect it. I didn't know what that was going to look like or mean for me. But I'm really grateful because although I grew up here in the southern part of the United States, where there are a lot of Baptist churches that are Southern Baptists or missionary Baptists that don't ordain women and don't support women in ministry. I grew up in an American Baptist church, and we had women on staff, pastors, associate pastors. My mother is an ordained minister, although that came later in life for her. Um, so it wasn't unusual in my local church for me to see that. And I'm grateful for that because although I certainly knew that there were many places around where I lived and in the culture of the church in the southern part of the United States that women were not supported, I was in an environment that was supported. And that really allowed me to sort of say, okay, I can step fully into this. But I will say that one of my calls, I currently am I teach preaching and chaplaincy at Fuller Theological Seminary. And one of my primary calls, I believe, in the midst of my call, is to support women who may not be in supportive spaces and who are still trying to figure out what that looks like because they're hearing the call, but they're in places where they can't be seen and heard and express that call. And so it has been a winding journey for me. But like I said, like the Holy Spirit does, it has come along and bolstered me in the ways that I needed and allowed me to make connections and community with people and women who are also in that call.
Thanks so much,
Mhm.
Jaclyn. And we'll just move to you, Grace, because you're coming from a very different cultural context. Tell us a little bit about where you are currently and also that sense of call and how it's been worked out over the course of your life.
Yes, thank you so much, Karen and Jacqueline. It's great to hear your story. I'm very happy to share a little bit about my story and journey of faith. I'm currently in Bethlehem, and it's a place that I deeply love and deeply appreciate calling home. I loved growing up in Bethlehem. I think it's the most beautiful place on earth. In fact, my home is located within a 2-minute walk from the Church of Nativity, where historically it is believed that Jesus, the Lord of Light, was born. And I loved reflecting on the fact that Jesus walked in our land, in our streets. This is the very place where he proclaimed miracles, signs, and wonders, and that he is the same today, that he lives in our hearts and in our city. I remember growing up admiring the beautiful hills of Bethlehem and thinking of Jesus' words that the Spirit of the Lord is upon him. He has been anointed to share the good news. And also thinking of the verses in the Old Testament saying how beautiful it is, the feet of those who bring good news. I was brought up in a Christian home. My parents taught me to love God and walk in His ways. They encouraged me to reflect God's love in all my interactions, to pray, and to walk faithfully and humbly with Him. I remember particularly at the age of 13 that Jesus called me to study His Word. And I remember that deep passion in my heart, not only to study His Word, but also to share His living Word with others. I didn't only see this as a vocation, but as a divine calling to pursue God's greatest purposes in my life. I was deeply aware of the difficult context that I grew up in, but also the urgent need for faithful followers of Christ in my community. And earlier on, I realized there was a paucity of Arab women, female theologians. So, reflecting on my own journey through theological education, I know that this path wasn't simply a personal choice, but it was a clear response to God's calling. I heard his voice in my heart and I obeyed it wholeheartedly. I remember particularly being impacted by Paul's words that I consider everything else as a waste for the surpassing worth of knowing Jesus Christ, and I consider everything else as in vain so that I may gain Christ. So Christ has become my treasure. Every day I am reminded of this calling. At the same time, I'm aware of the unspoken rules sometimes in the theological academy and in churches. And yet I have been and continue to be faithful to my calling. I carry it in my heart, and I know that God has a purpose in whatever door He is opening for me. I love to see lives changed and transformed. I've done quite a bit of field research, particularly with Arab women in theological education, and each time I am reminded how important it is to share God's words. Their faith challenges me, their lives, their lived experiences, and I know that they too need encouragement, and I consider that as a major part of my calling. There are fears and there are hopes, there are challenges, but there are also victories with God. When we honor the calling that He gives us, He helps us to walk faithfully, and with open hands and heart, we can honor Him in everything that we do.
Thank you so much, Grace. And it's compelling to hear about that resilient faithfulness that has been a theme throughout your life. Moving to you, and you've been on quite a journey too in terms of your sense of calling, and now you're actually teaching, preaching to those in Egypt and further afield. But just give us a glimpse into your own sense of calling to this journey.
Thanks, Karen, and thanks, Jaclyn and Grace. It's so encouraging to hear other people's stories, just to kind of feel normal. So that's nice. Um, my my sense of calling to preaching started before I knew it was called calling to preaching. So I was preaching before it was defined for me that this was a call. I was just preaching because it's one of the ministries of the church, which everybody is invited to do. So my very first mini sermon, I was 14 years old because I was in a small church and we didn't have the luxury of putting people on the side while other people served. We needed everybody to serve. And so I had opportunities to share little homilies, little devotions already with my youth group. And then as I got older, I got to share with bigger groups and older groups. So in that sense, my sense of calling to preaching was gradual, smooth, welcomed, because in my church in Egypt, women could preach, women could teach. That was welcomed. It's just that we couldn't do it on Sundays. We couldn't do it in the general meetings where there's other people attending, especially male adults. But other than that, we're welcome to do it in camps and retreats for the youth, for the children, for the women. So when I started understanding the word calling, and when I started understanding, or let's say, when I started seeing models of women who preach on Sundays, mostly they were foreign women invited to my local congregation who were allowed to do things that Egyptian women weren't allowed to do, like preach on Sundays, like give the benediction, like serve the Lord's Supper, but Egyptian women weren't. And so it was somewhere in my teens that I started asking, why is it that foreign women are allowed to do things that Egyptian women aren't? And why is it that women are allowed to do things 6 days a week, but not on Sunday? What is it about Sunday that made it more holy or made us less holy to participate in it? And so those were the beginnings of my questioning about my own calling, not so much for preaching, but much more for women leadership in the church.
Thanks so much, Anne, and just a good encouragement to remember how God forms you even when you're young, before you even know what's going on. God is at work, and I'm sure that will be an encouragement to many who have had that burning in their bones from when they were children, and also for those who've, like you, your Jaclyn, your mum, later in life, it became more of a journey.